Okay, this is the second part of the online session for KEN2002 Shakespeare. What I want to talk for 6 or 7 minutes now about is preparing the essay. Obviously this is very important for you. Most of the marks of the module are going on the essay, so you should give it your full attention and you should take time to prepare it correctly. So, as you will see from the documents I sent you out last week, and what I'm going to show you here, the essay will be marked on 3 areas: formatting, weighted at 10%, use of English, weighted at 30%, and most importantly the content, which is weighted at 60%. So altogether they make up 100%, obviously. So formatting, use of English, and content. Okay, so let's have a look at formatting. You'll be assessed on these headings that you can see here. So there are 10 very different areas, and you'll be marked out of 10 on each of these. So formatting of the bibliography, that's available in the Harvard Referencing Guide, so that just requires you to go to the guide and format your bibliography correctly. Please remember to include enough sources. I mean, we're looking for 10 or more. That's not counting the primary texts. Look, the choice of font and justification, that's Times New Roman and Arial, or Times New Roman or Arial, yes, and justified means that the text reaches both sides of the page, so there should be a straight line of text down the left and a straight line of text down the right. The text should be size 12, of course, and it should be double spaced. That allows me to annotate in between the lines and so on to give you some feedback. It's very difficult if it's single spaced, and it's very hard to read. And once you put your reader into a negative frame of mind, they're going to start picking out faults. So Times New Roman, Arial, justified, double spaced. Use of page numbers, very important, and is something that students overlook very frequently. But pages come loose, things can get lost and mixed up, so please add page numbers. Titles of books and plays should be in italics. Titles of short stories and poems go in single inverted commas with no italics. There's a special way to format citations. Citations are the bits and brackets that you use in the text when you're referring to the primary text or to your research. And there's a particular way, and again it's in the Harvard Referencing Guide. And the punctuation of citations. The punctuation, so if you write you give a quote, close the inverted commas, then you give your citation, and then the full stop comes after the citation, not before. Formatting of in-text quotations, try and make them flow with your own writing. And if it's not going to flow and it's going to be a definition, introduce it with a colon, then single inverted commas, no italics or anything like that. Offset quotations should be offset from the left margin by 1 inch, reduced in font to size 11, and single spaced, and again introduced by a colon, and they should have a citation at the end just before the final full stop of the quotation. Remember, offset quotations for quotes that run for more than 2.5 lines. Make sure to indent the first line of each paragraph except the first paragraph, and don't skip lines between paragraphs. Skip lines mean new sections. You will never be asked at undergraduate level to write an essay that requires new sections, certainly not for me. So that's formatting. So you'll be marked out of 10 on each of those, and you can see some of them it's very easy to pick up 10 marks, and that's worth 10% overall. The next category on which you will be assessed will be use of English, weighted at 30%. Length of paragraphs should be 125 to 175 words long. The last line of each paragraph should link the content of that paragraph to the content of the next. So linking, very important. That helps your reader understand what you're talking about. You're leading your reader through. Punctuation, that's it just in general. Commas, full stops, semicolons, colons. As English teachers, you ought to know how that's done right. Apostrophes, this is one of the biggest problems across all years, across all students. When to use apostrophes, use them for possessives. You need to revise the rules of that. The punctuation of words like however, that really attracts my attention and attracts my red pen, metaphorically, so please be careful. The word however almost always needs commas before and after if it's being used in a sentence. If it's being used at the beginning of a sentence, usually needs a comma after it. Spelling, obviously. Grammar, again, shouldn't be a problem for English teachers, but it is, so you need to proofread and read your essay out aloud to yourself, and you'll hear where there are problems. Incorporating quotations into the flow of your own sentence, very important, and the use of appropriate academic voice. That means no first person. Do not say I think. Okay, there are ways around that, and we've talked about that a great deal, so do not use the first person. It makes your essay too subjective, makes it too opinionated. You're trying to present a rational argument here, and you don't want to bog it down with personal opinion. And the third section upon which you'll be assessed is content, and weighted at 60%, so the vast majority of the marks go for this. And again, you're marked out of 10 on each of these. So the quality and number of sources in the bibliography, as I said, we're looking for more than 10 secondary sources being cited and in your bibliography, and if they're in the bibliography, they have to be used in the essay. You can't just beef up the bibliography. You need to have an introduction and a conclusion. The introductory paragraph should be 150 to 200 words long, likewise the conclusion. Both of them should clearly lay out the structure of your essay. This essay is going to discuss X, Y, Z. It's going to say this about X, it's going to say that about Y, it's going to say that about Z. It's going to conclude this. Now, let's move on. That's what the introduction and conclusion contains. A summary, a detailed summary of the structure of your own essay. Don't try to introduce theory or anything like that. You mention the theory you're going to apply, or you foreshadow the research you're going to use. Then you should try and introduce that research after your introduction. Have you introduced the research and backed it up with citation and quotation and reference? All the necessary terminology and concepts defined, yes or no, 10 marks. Interesting observations, so observe what's interesting in the primary text. What is noteworthy in these plays? Then research applied to the primary text, very important. Don't try to talk about the text, then talk about the research. Apply the research as a tool to the text. Draw quotations from the primary text and from the research that are relevant and apply them. Apply research and then reflect upon it. Support all your points and then draw convincing conclusions. Couldn't be easier. But what we need you to do is to keep your head on and think clearly. Think about all of these things when you're writing your essay. Once you've it written, go back and have a look at this. Have a listen to this video and make sure you've covered all the bases. So that concludes the second part of what I wanted to talk to you about in this final session.